The problem of evil. One of the oldest and most debated questions in philosophy and theology is the problem of evil. It asks how a benevolent, omnipotent, and omniscient God can coexist with the presence of evil and suffering in the world. This question has challenged thinkers for centuries, raising profound issues about morality, free will, and the nature of the divine. If God is all-loving, it seems he would want to eliminate suffering. If he is all-powerful, he would have the ability to do so. And if he is all-knowing, he would be aware of all suffering. Yet suffering continues. This apparent contradiction lies at the heart of the problem. To illustrate, consider a natural disaster, an earthquake, for instance, that devastates an entire region. Thousands may die, including innocent children. Survivors are left grieving, homeless, and struggling to rebuild their lives. If God is both loving and capable, why would he permit such a tragedy? For many, such events serve as evidence that either God does not exist or that he is not as loving or powerful as religious teachings claim. One popular explanation is the free will defense. This view holds that God granted humans free will so they could make their own choices. Free will allows for love, creativity, and moral decision-making, but it also opens the door to cruelty, selfishness, and harm. In this perspective, God does not interfere with human actions because doing so would take away the freedom that makes us truly human. Without free will, we would be like robots, incapable of genuine relationships or moral growth. Thus, evil is seen as the price of human freedom. However, the free will defense addresses only moral evil, evil caused by human actions. It does not fully explain natural evil, suffering caused by forces beyond human control, such as earthquakes, hurricanes, or diseases. Why would a loving God create a world where such suffering is even possible? Some argue that natural disasters and diseases are part of the physical laws that make life possible. For example, tectonic plate movement causes earthquakes, but also helps shape the Earth's surface and support life. Similarly, the evolution of disease through natural selection is part of the same process that drives the diversity of life. In this view, suffering is an unfortunate but inevitable consequence of a functioning natural world. Another approach is the soul-making theodicy, which suggests that suffering has a deeper purpose, even if we can't always understand it. According to this view, hardship helps individuals grow spiritually and morally. Adversity can build compassion, resilience, and humility. A person who survives a serious illness might gain a deeper appreciation for life or develop a stronger empathy for others. In this light, suffering is not meaningless. It's a part of a broader plan to help us become better people. However, this explanation raises difficult questions. Why do some people suffer far more than others? And how can we explain seemingly pointless tragedies, like the death of an innocent child? Critics argue that this perspective often feels inadequate in the face of immense and senseless suffering. There's also the greater good defense, which claims that God's actions may serve purposes beyond our understanding. From this perspective, what appears to be unjust suffering may play a role in a larger divine plan. A tragic event might lead to long-term positive outcomes, or be part of a purpose we simply cannot comprehend. This view emphasizes our limited human perspective versus God's all-encompassing understanding. Critics of this view argue it demands too much faith. If we can't understand God's reasons, how can we trust they are just? For those enduring pain, the idea that their suffering might serve some hidden purpose is often far from comforting. For atheists and skeptics, the problem of evil is a strong argument against the existence of an all-powerful, all-loving God. They suggest the simplest explanation for suffering is that no divine being is controlling the universe. Instead, the world operates according to natural laws, and suffering is a byproduct of those laws. Earthquakes happen due to tectonic activity, not because of divine will. Diseases spread through biological mechanisms, not as a test of faith. While this view avoids the need to reconcile God with evil, it brings up other questions, chiefly how to find meaning in a world without divine oversight. In response, religious believers often emphasize the limits of human understanding. Faith, they argue, is about trusting in God, even when His ways seem mysterious. For many, faith provides comfort amid suffering, with the hope of a better future or an afterlife where justice will be restored. This view encourages humility and trust in the face of life's uncertainties. Ultimately, the problem of evil remains one of the most profound and enduring questions in human thought. It challenges our beliefs about God, suffering, and the limits of human understanding. While no single answer resolves the issue for everyone, the debate itself has deepened our reflections on morality, freedom, and what it means to be human. Whether we view suffering as a divine test, a consequence of natural law, or simply a part of life, the problem of evil forces us to confront the deepest questions about existence. The paradox of identity, Zurag. The paradox of identity poses a simple yet profound question. What truly makes something remain the same over time? At first glance, the answer seems obvious. A chair today will still be a chair tomorrow. You're still you from one day to the next. But when we look closer, identity becomes far more complex. Things change, people grow. Even the smallest shift in shape, purpose, or thought leads to a deeper question. Is it still the same? Imagine a wooden ship that sailed the ocean for years. Over time, some of its wooden planks rot and are gradually replaced. Take a moment to share in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. It's incredible how these timeless ideas connect us across the world. If you enjoy drifting through thoughtful explorations like this, consider subscribing to Tired Thinker, where each story is made to calm your mind and stretch your curiosity. Now, let your body relax and your thoughts wander as we unravel one of philosophy's most mind-bending mysteries. As the ship continues its journey, every single plank is eventually replaced. Is it still the same ship? This is the famous ship of Theseus' thought experiment. Some say it is the same ship, because the transformation happened gradually and its function never changed. Others say it's not the same, since none of the original materials remain. But now, imagine you collect all those original, discarded planks and rebuild a new ship with them. Which is the true ship now? The one sailing the sea, or the one made from its original pieces? This puzzle doesn't just apply to ships, it applies to everything, including you. Your body is constantly changing. Cells die, new ones take their place. In fact, most of the cells in your body are replaced every 7 to 10 years. So, if nearly every cell in you is new, are you still the same person? Most would say yes, because your memories and personality feel familiar. But memories fade. Personalities evolve. What happens when someone forgets who they are, or drastically changes after a life event? Are they still the same individual? Now consider the modern world. A person slowly replaces parts of their body with artificial limbs or organs. One arm, then the other, legs, eventually, even their heart. If their brain remains, most would say they're still the same person. But what if the brain is also replaced, piece by piece and with artificial parts? At what point do they stop being human? And at what point do they become someone or something else? This paradox doesn't stop with people. It applies to objects, memories, and meaning. Think about a family heirloom, like an old chair. Over the years, parts break, fabric fades, repairs are made. Eventually, every part has been replaced. Is it still the same chair your grandparents once cherished? To your family, it might be, because of the memories it holds. But to a stranger, it might seem like a completely new piece of furniture. The same idea applies to books, ideas, and even nations. What if you rewrote a novel, one chapter at a time, adding, deleting, adjusting, until nothing of the original remains? Is it still the same book? Or consider a country. Borders shift, leaders change, people come and go. Yet we still call it by the same name. What truly defines its identity, its geography, its government, or its story? Philosophers disagree. Some say identity is about persistence over time. As long as there's a connection between past and present, something remains the same. Like a river, its water constantly changes, but its shape and flow remain. Others argue that identity lies in material components. If every piece of something is replaced, it's no longer the original. And then there's the matter of perspective. A car, fully restored with new parts, might be treasured by its owner, but seen as inauthentic by a collector. A band with none of its original members may still sell out shows, but is it truly the same band? Identity, in many ways, is shaped not by facts, but by context, emotion, and interpretation. This paradox even reaches into medicine and technology. When someone loses their memory through illness or trauma, are they still the same person? This affects not only personal relationships, but decisions around care, responsibility, and even legal identity. In the world of AI and machine learning, as a program evolves and improves, does it become something new? Can a machine ever have an identity? The paradox of identity invites us to reflect inward. We like to think of ourselves as stable, unchanging, me. But the person you were 10 years ago had different beliefs, habits, and dreams. What ties it all together is your story, a narrative that links your past, present, and future into a sense of self. This story helps us feel whole, even if the details constantly shift. At its heart, the paradox of identity reveals a profound truth. Nothing stays the same, yet we still cling to the idea of permanence. Whether we're talking about ships, people, ideas, or nations, identity is not fixed. It's a process, a dance between what changes and what remains connected. And perhaps this very struggle to define ourselves, to make meaning out of change, is what defines us the most. The island of truth-tellers and liars. On this island, every person belongs to one of two groups: truth-tellers, who always speak the truth, and liars, who always lie. Your goal is to figure out who belongs to which group. At first, it might seem easy. Just ask someone a question and assess their answer. But it gets tricky fast. If someone always lies, how can you trust anything they say? A direct question like, "Are you a truth teller?" won't help. Both groups will say, yes, a truth teller honestly, and a liar dishonestly. To solve this, you need to get clever with how you ask questions, especially ones that use logic against itself. One effective method is to ask what another person would say. For example, ask person A, "What would person B say if I asked whether you are a truth teller?" Here's how the logic works. If person A is a truth teller, they'll truthfully report what person B, a liar, would say. Since person B always lies, they would claim person A is a liar. So person A would say, person B would say, "I'm a liar." If person A is a liar, they will lie about what person B, a truth teller, would truthfully say. Person B would say person A is a liar, but person A would lie and say, person B would say, "I'm a truth teller." In both cases, if the answer is person B would say, "I'm a truth teller," then person A is a liar. This logical trap helps you determine each person's true identity. The puzzle forces you to rely on indirect reasoning, where you structure questions in a way that doesn't rely on the respondent being truthful or dishonest. It works either way. Phrases like, "What would you say if I asked?" or "What would someone else say about?" build a logical loop that reveals the truth. This puzzle isn't just a brain teaser, it's a lesson in clear thinking, logic, and communication. It's used in philosophy and computer science to illustrate how indirect questioning can reveal hidden truths. It also parallels real life, where people may obscure the truth, intentionally or not. Learning to frame effective questions is a powerful tool for navigating complex or uncertain situations. More complex versions of the puzzle add people who alternate between truth and lies. These scenarios require repeated questioning and pattern recognition, much like how we deal with inconsistent behavior in the real world. Ultimately, the truth tellers and liars problem is a timeless thought experiment. It reminds us that the way we ask questions can be just as important as the answers we receive, and that truth can always be uncovered with careful logic and reasoning. The lottery coincidence. At its core, the lottery coincidence forces us to confront a deep tension, our difficulty in distinguishing between pure chance and deliberate manipulation. Imagine buying a lottery ticket, and against staggering odds, you win. It feels like a once-in-a-lifetime event. But then comes the unsettling question: is it more likely that you genuinely won, or that the system was somehow rigged in your favor? At first, this might sound absurd, but it reveals the fragile boundary between improbability and suspicion. Let's unpack it. In most lotteries, your odds of winning are minuscule. For example, with a 1 in a million chance, your probability is just 0.0001%. That sounds impossible, yet someone always wins. That's not strange, it's expected. When millions participate, even the rarest outcome can and will happen eventually. But now flip the script. Imagine you're the winner, and someone accuses you of cheating. They argue that the odds were so tiny that the only logical explanation is foul play. At first glance, this logic might seem valid, but is it? To assess that, we must weigh two possibilities. The rare event of winning happened naturally. Someone rigged the lottery in your favor. Rigging a lottery, especially one governed by strict oversight and security, would require access, a motive, and the means to manipulate the system. That level of conspiracy might actually be less likely than a legitimate win. Without evidence of manipulation, the simpler explanation is often the correct one. You just got lucky. This reflects Occam's razor, the principle that the simplest explanation is usually best. But our brains struggle with that. Humans are wired to see patterns, even in randomness. This trait, called apophenia, makes us hunt for meaning behind rare events. So when something unlikely happens, especially if it affects us personally, we instinctively ask, why me? Was it destiny? Or something I'm not seeing? We're uncomfortable with the idea that some events are simply the product of chance. The discomfort intensifies when the improbable event is deeply personal, like a lottery win. Suddenly, it's not just statistics. It's your life changing in an instant. This bias, our emotional response to improbability, is what the lottery thought experiment exposes. Now, consider a more extreme case. Imagine not just winning once, but twice. Though unbelievably rare, it's happened in real life. One woman in the US won 2 major jackpots within a few years. Naturally, people were skeptical. Statisticians, however, pointed out that while the odds were astronomically low, they weren't zero. Given the massive number of lottery players, even such rare events can happen somewhere, sometime. But we tend to interpret such extreme outcomes as suspicious, not because there's evidence of fraud, but because our minds can't grasp how rarity works. This same logic applies beyond lotteries. Think about everyday coincidences. You bump into an old friend in a foreign city or dream about something that later happens. These moments feel loaded with meaning because they're unexpected. But are they truly significant, or just random events we happen to notice? The structure of lotteries introduces another tension. They are designed to be random, yet someone must win. This makes outcomes like winning feel unfair or suspicious, when in fact, they are inevitable by design. Accusing someone of cheating only because their win was improbable undermines the very nature of randomness. The thought experiment challenges us to think more critically about how we interpret rare events. Are our suspicions based on solid evidence, or are they just a reaction to the discomfort of randomness? Probability tells only part of the story. Context matters. If we know that the lottery is secure and well-regulated, the odds of fraud could be even smaller than the odds of a legitimate win. Ultimately, the lottery coincidence reveals the limits of our intuition. We're not naturally good at interpreting probability, and our emotions often cloud our reasoning. This thought experiment isn't about proving whether a lottery was rigged or not. It's about exploring how we think. It invites us to reflect on our assumptions and examine the way we perceive rare events. It encourages both curiosity and skepticism in a world full of improbable moments. Because in life, rare things do happen. Sometimes they're just luck. Sometimes they point to deeper patterns. The challenge is learning to tell the difference without letting our instincts mislead us. The decision-making loop. The decision-making loop is a mental trap where we get stuck cycling through choices, unable to decide. It often begins when we feel overwhelmed by too many options, either because we fear making the wrong choice or because we keep second-guessing ourselves. This loop doesn't just make decision-making harder, it can completely paralyze us, trapping us in frustrating cycles of overthinking. Imagine standing in front of multiple vending machines, all filled with different snacks. You're hungry and have money, but the endless options make you hesitate. One snack is healthier, another tastier, one is cheaper, another bigger. You start weighing every pro and con, worrying about choosing the wrong one or missing a better option. 10 minutes pass, and you still haven't made a choice. This is a small but clear example of the decision-making loop in action. The loop often starts with uncertainty. When faced with a decision, we want to choose the best possible option. This desire for perfection can lead us to overanalyze everything in search of the right answer. But in many cases, there is no single perfect choice, just different outcomes. Still, we often ignore this fact and continue searching, hoping to remove all doubt. This only invites more concerns and new factors, dragging us deeper into the loop. Consider a bigger decision, like choosing a career path. A young adult may struggle between becoming a doctor, a respected, stable profession requiring years of study, and becoming an artist, which offers creative freedom but financial uncertainty. Instead of choosing, they stay stuck, researching endlessly, asking others for advice, and reading countless articles. Every new piece of information adds confusion. Weeks or even months later, they're no closer to making a decision, and the time feels wasted. The decision-making loop becomes especially dangerous when time is limited or the stakes are high. Think of a soldier in combat who must decide to advance or retreat. Overthinking could cost lives. The same applies to ER doctors, firefighters, or anyone working under pressure. They're trained to make quick, confident decisions based on the best available information. At its core, the decision-making loop is driven by fear. Fear of failure, regret, and the unknown. Thoughts like, what if I choose wrong? Or what if there's a better option? Can stop us from acting. Ironically, not deciding is still a decision, one that often leads to more anxiety and missed opportunities. Escaping the loop is hard because our brains crave certainty. We want to know we're making the right choice, but life doesn't offer guarantees. Most decisions come with trade-offs, and you can't predict everything. For example, deciding to move to a new city involves researching housing, jobs, and weather. But you won't know how it really feels until you're living there. Another factor that fuels the loop is choice overload, having too many options. Modern life presents endless choices, which can be overwhelming. Imagine shopping online for a phone. You compare models, reviews, prices, and features. Each choice has pros and cons, and new options keep appearing. This overload makes commitment even harder. In fact, research shows people are often happier with their decisions when they have fewer choices. Breaking the decision-making loop. Escaping the loop starts with a change in mindset. Accept that no decision is perfect. Every choice involves some level of risk or uncertainty. Instead of aiming for perfection, focus on making the best decision with the information available. It's okay to make mistakes. They're part of learning and growth. If something doesn't work out, you can adjust. A practical tip is to set clear criteria for your decision. If you're buying a car, decide in advance which factors matter most, like safety, fuel efficiency, and price. Then evaluate each option based on those, and when one fits, commit to it. Setting limits prevents endless comparisons and second guessing. Imposing time limits can also help. For simple choices like what to eat for dinner, give yourself 5 minutes. When time's up, decide and move on. For bigger decisions like a job or house, set a deadline for when to stop researching and start deciding. Structure reduces overthinking. You can also reframe how you see decisions. Instead of treating them as permanent, life-altering moves, think of them as experiments. For example, trying a new job isn't forever. If it doesn't work out, you can change paths. Seeing decisions as experiments lowers the pressure and encourages action. Talking through your options with someone else can bring clarity. A friend or mentor might offer a fresh perspective or point out something you missed. Just be careful not to get caught up in too many outside opinions. That can worsen the loop. It also helps to recognize when emotions, like fear of regret, are keeping you stuck. Regret often comes from believing there was a perfect choice you missed. In reality, decisions are about trade-offs, not perfection. Focus on what you stand to gain rather than what you might lose. In the end, breaking free from the decision-making loop means balancing thought and action. Thinking things through is important, but at some point, you must take the leap. Action creates momentum, even if it doesn't go as planned. It moves you forward. Life is uncertain, but progress only happens when you act, not when you stand still.